Hi. Can you hear me? Can you hear me
Hear
okay?
you now. It takes me a minute.
Takes a minute, but I am dying over your backdrop. It looks so good.
Thank you.
Love it.
Um, edit my testing. Okay. It was doing it twice. Yes, I've been working on this today.
Yeah, it looks so good. Is that a swan like planter?
Hey, let me tell you, that was my grandmother's
No.
planter.
And your boys managed not to break it. That's kind of amazing.
Somehow, because it was never up anywhere. It's always been on the floor, just kind of has a little spot. And um, I have heard now that swans are so hot right now. Hey, Stephanie.
Hi.
Hi, it's so
Thanks
nice
so
to
much
meet
for
you guys.
coming.
Sure, thanks for inviting me.
Yes. I was talking to Elizabeth about her backdrop and she just renovated her house. And so I'm enjoying the view
Oh,
from
that's
her where she
Yes,
is.
this was my
in-
grandmother's swan, and now swans are a hot thing right now. So I've moved her to a place of prominence, and it's my favorite thing I think I've done.
It's,
oh, that's so
I
nice.
love it. It's so amazing.
Thank
Stephanie,
you.
where are you zooming from?
Portland,
Okay.
Oregon, not Maine.
Yes, yes.
So
I was looking at your bio trying to figure out where you lived. It was not clear. So I was like, I wonder where she'll be joining us.
yeah, I've moved around a lot. And also I should give you a heads up that we're starting to lose daylight here. And when it happens really quickly. So we have all
Okay.
these like auxiliary lights around me, but I might have like a very dramatic light change during the
Oh,
course of our conversation.
we have had these things happen in our Zooms. Do not worry. I
We
think at
had
one
one
point.
time where the sun all of a sudden came into my living room, and I was completely blinded looking. And yeah, we understand that. And
It
it is
was,
pitch dark here in Texas right
yes.
now. So enjoy the sun.
Yeah, I think I've got like 12 more minutes of it.
Oh my gosh.
And then maybe we'll
I
see it.
lived on the edge of the eastern like time zone, and so it got dark so quickly. Like I was not used to it. We were in Kentucky. And so but which was crazy. I was glad I did not have kids in the summer because it would get this winter it would get so dark quickly. In the summer, it was like 10 o'clock bright outside. And I was like, imagine trying to put your kids to bed. Like they would not be not having it at all. And so I'm glad that I did not live there for that experience. But
Yeah.
it is kind of crazy. Well, we have just a couple more minutes and we have a few people joining us in the chat. If anybody wants to say where they're from, we have Beatrice saying that she's from Long Island, New York, which is amazing. We have people from all over, which is the most fun about this book club. It's everybody's book club. It's not just Waco's. And Lauren from Nashville.
Hey, Lauren.
It's
Hey,
so fun
Beatrice.
to see familiar. And Melissa, yes, we familiar faces of orders that have come through and people who've come through the shop. It's so awesome. So
Well, your book has been such a hit. I think I sold four copies of it in the last 24 hours.
Oh
It's,
my gosh. Thank you.
yes.
yes,
That is super nice to hear.
Well, you
it's
make it easy.
incredible.
That's what I
Yes,
love and also Allison. So how we do this is I'm sort of like the what do you call it? The scout looking out for books months and months in advance. And of course, fell in love with Libby. This is my top three books of the year. I read over 200 books, and this is my top three.
Wow.
And then Allison just read it this weekend, and
yes,
she
it's
loved
very
it.
fresh.
Yeah.
I absolutely loved it. Absolutely. I
Oh,
mean, we talked to a lot of authors. I absolutely loved this one. It was just 5 stars.
oh, thank
I enjoy a lot of the books that we read, but this one I was like, oh my gosh, just
you.
Mhm.
needed a minute after it. It was
That
so
And
great.
and it's fun for us at Fabled to get to find a book like Libby, where it's like, you need to go to indies to find really, really
Yes.
good books.
Yes.
And this is one of them that you know,
Mhm.
you may not see, on the Target checkout quite yet, but
Right.
we have found it, and wow, love it, love it.
Yes. It's so
Oh,
great.
thank you. That is very kind of you. That makes my day to hear. So thanks for sharing that.
I love it. Well, we have prepared lots of questions for you. And the best thing about this book club, in my opinion, is that we get to talk about the end. So everyone who's joined has hopefully read. If you're joining and you haven't read, um, please get off and watch it later because you really need to enjoy the rest of the book because it is absolutely amazing. And we will have the chat open. So if you have any questions you would like to ask Stephanie, feel free to type it in the chat and we'll try to get to it. We have tons of questions, so we may just hit some of those questions you have to everybody out there. So again, reminder, spoilers abound in this book club. Also, if you ever need to get off, this will be recorded and sent out 24 hours later. So tomorrow evening, you should receive a link that will have this recording and you'll be able to watch it. And that is helpful if you have not read this. So don't worry, you will receive a link. You will be able to hear all the answers that Stephanie's going to give us to all of our questions. And at the end, we will announce our next month's book club. And Elizabeth, it's been a minute since we have been on book club because we did not do December. So I feel like I'm like
No,
back in the swing. And what a
I
book
know.
to start off the year with. Stephanie, I'm going to let Elizabeth formally introduce you to all of our viewers.
All right, so we're so excited tonight to have Stephanie Booth with us. She has an MA in English from the University of New Mexico and an MFA in creative writing from Emerson College. Her work has appeared in Cosmopolitan, Real Simple, O, Marie Claire, The Washington Post, and the Los Angeles Times. Stephanie has been a contributing editor at Teen People and an advice columnist for Teen, and she has helped with casting for MTV's award-winning documentary series, True Life. Stephanie is a content writer for Brightline, an app that provides behavioral health care for kids. Libby Lost and Found is her debut novel, and boy, do we love highlighting fantastic debut novels at Fabled. And I have to say, again, I found this book this summer. I was actually at a bookstore in Massachusetts that is one that's sort of near and dear to my heart. And I talked to the book buyer there and they said, have you read Libby Lost and Found? It is such a good one. And I picked it up and immediately it was like top 3 of the year. Absolutely fantastic. And anyway, I'm thrilled to have you here and we cannot wait to hear more about Libby. And but when we get started here, will you kind of give us a brief synopsis of the book for those of us who read it 6 months ago?
Yeah, thank you very much for the kind introduction. And I should probably add, I no longer work for Brightline. I haven't worked for them for years. It's so funny to me that for some reason that's everywhere associated with my bio, but I feel like I need to point that out since I am no longer employed by them. So I'm just a freelance writer.
Okay.
But everything else is accurate. So Libby Lost and Found is about 40-year-old Libby Weeks, who is the best-selling fantasy series writer in the world. She writes under a pseudonym called FT Goldhero, so no one knows who she is. But before she can finish the very last book in the series, she learns that she has early onset dementia and is unable to write and asks her biggest fan, who happens to be an 11-year-old girl named Peanut Bixton, to help her finish the last book.
So great.
Yeah.
That's the big picture view.
I love it. So of course, I absolutely loved that she was an author and that there was this huge series that she was a part of, The Falling Children. And when I was talking to Elizabeth about this yesterday, I was like, what's so interesting is that you almost have a book within a book. Like you've had to create the Falling Children's world and you start like right off with it. And so, I mean, I admit, like I had to kind of get my bearings as soon as I like read the book where I was like, what's happening? I'm trying to understand. Is it double the work to write a book within the book?
Looking back, probably yes, probably yes. But I think I didn't intentionally start off thinking it would be that way. I started off writing the Falling Children series to try to get an idea of what Libby was probably writing. And then the more I wrote, I kind of did a synopsis of what would be in each of the books and what the characters would be like, and some plot points and some characters. And then the more that I wrote about that, the more it felt like these were all parts of the threads that made up Libby. Um, and then it seemed like, oh, well, maybe to better understand her, readers need to understand the book she writes.
Mhm.
And it kind of took off from there.
I love it.
Well, I love, of course, we live kind of in the publishing world at Fabled, and you do too. And I loved getting a glimpse into the publishing world through the eyes of Libby, and even the stress of trying to get that deadline met. Did you kind of take any personal experiences from your life in the publishing world and put it in Libby Lost and Found?
That is a very good question. I think I feel like I've been so lucky. I've had a fabulous experience with source books, and I love my editor, and everyone that I've come into contact with at the company has been amazing. I think working in the magazine world and having a lot of friends who have published fiction or nonfiction books and hearing about their experiences um, maybe gave me some fuel for some of the plot points of Libby, and how sometimes decisions can be made that serve the bottom line, but not necessarily the author or the books themselves.
That was so great. Um, okay, so reading your bio, it's very hard to just kind of breeze past it and not be like, whoa, whoa. Like it is so unique. I mean, True Life, I loved that show. I remember in high school and college. How do you write about such like such different topics and then jump into writing fiction?
I I feel like I've been really lucky. I've fallen into a bunch of different writing gigs that I think have all kind of fed me as a fiction writer. For a while, I was doing tons of true crime stories for women's magazines back when they were, they
Right.
came to your house and were delivered in your mailbox, and you couldn't wait to read everything that was in them. And for many years, my bread and butter was as told to profiles. So I was interviewing people like I was trapped in a car wreck, or I, gosh, what was it? Uh, I went to spring break and something horrible happened on the beach. People who had to deal with diagnoses or weird family issues. Um, so gosh, I want to say I probably did over 100 of those over the years, and I absolutely loved it. Just getting to know people and hearing their stories. And I think no matter who I talked to or what they had been through, it was always inspiring to me to hear how they had dealt with it. And most of the time, people wanted to talk to me because they really wanted to share their experience with other people, and that desire to share what they had been through to help someone else. So I think it made me such a better writer overall. Just learning empathy and how to actively listen to people.
Mm.
I don't know if that answers your question. That was a little
Oh, yes.
long-winded.
That's so great.
Okay. Well, of course, I have been working at Fabled as their book buyer since the store opened in 2019. But my life before that was I was a speech therapist who worked with dementia patients for 20 years.
Wow.
And I absolutely loved my time with my dementia patients. And so I was very, very intrigued by the way how you got yourself in the mind of a woman who is going through early onset dementia, because that to me is so I just can't imagine how hard that would be. It's different than when someone's having trouble with their physical body. It's much different than when they're losing their mental faculty. So how did you do that? How did you put yourself in Libby's shoes?
I think I started off doing, I think what really got me set on this particular idea is I read a newspaper article somewhere that was profiling a woman who had early onset dementia. I think she might have even been in her 30s.
Mhm.
And I remember my heart just breaking as I read that article, thinking, I cannot even imagine what she and her family are going through. And at the same time, I was doing a lot of magazine stories where no matter who I was talking to, whether it was a doctor or a clinical researcher, it just didn't matter. Through the course of our conversation, people would start talking about a loved one that they had who had dementia and how they were caring for them.
Mm.
Um, and it just stuck with me, and really it struck me as something that is much so much more difficult for the people watching it happen.
Yeah.
It doesn't just affect the person with dementia, but everyone around them. So I think I really hung on to the personal stories that I heard from people. And then I was doing as much research as I could on my own. And then the Alzheimer's Association was great about fact checking and
Mm.
kind of making sure I had some specific details right.
Yeah, everyone who goes through it, it's different for everyone depending on and what part of the brain it really affects the most. So you did a very good job of that, and I appreciated how you handled Libby's situation with grace and with humor too. I mean, you have to have a little bit of humor in this life as well.
Okay, I'm so excited to talk to you about my favorite character, and probably so many others' favorite character is Peanut. And Elizabeth and I were just gushing about her, and she said she reminds me of Scout in To Kill a
Oh,
Mockingbird. And this is a very random association, but I grew up watching the movie Prancer. I don't know if anybody else has watched Prancer, that their main character, Jessica, is so spunky and just so earnest in her belief that Santa is real when she's way too old to believe that. That reminded me so much of Peanut, just so earnest and no one else understands. And she was just so wonderful. Did she, you have an inspiration for her? Did she come from anywhere special?
I I love the Scout reference. I have not seen Prancer, but now I will go watch the
Yeah,
movie.
you will adore it.
Yeah. Um, no inspiration, I think, for Peanut, although, gosh, if you had to put my feet to the fire, I would probably say as a kid, I read voraciously and felt very protective and obsessed with a lot of the characters I read about. I don't think I was Peanut. I don't think I was ever as cool as Peanut, but I think a lot of the characters that I read were. So maybe just a mashup of that.
Love that. I want to say Michelle said on the chat that she gets Maddie from True Grit vibes, which that is a great reference. My husband and I always quote the quote about Maddie is she does not give off much sugar. We always say that about our daughter sometimes. So it's a good thing. Maddie had some spunk for sure.
The other one I think about is 11-year-old Flavia DeLuce from the Alan Bradley series. I don't know if you've read.
Oh, I need to
Oh
write
my
this down. I don't know
goodness.
that one either.
Oh, you will love it. This is 11-year-old. Yes, everyone loves Flavia. She's very much into chemistry, and she doesn't like her sister, so she will do little things, little chemistry projects to get under her sister's skin. And can someone remind me the first book? My brain's it's Alan Bradley. It's The Sweetness at the Bottom of the Pie. Got it. The Sweetness at the Bottom of the Pie. I think you'd like that book.
Right.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about the frenzy around falling children and how did you envision this frenzy? And of course, we have to think about Harry Potter. Did you kind of have a Harry Potter vibe about the book? So, okay.
Yeah, I think that definitely inspired me. I remember, you know, going to the bookstore at 11:59, for the midnight release, and how it was in the news and everyone was talking about it and how it was inspiring, rides at amusement parks and stories, and everyone wanted to know about the actors once, the casting was done, and everyone wanted to be in the movie. Um, so that was definitely top of mind for me. Um, I was thinking about this today when my kids were old enough and we were reading Harry Potter. I also remember that inexplicable feeling of them discovering the book and you can watch them falling in love with the characters and the story and wanting to read and then not wanting the book to end. And I remember my daughter fell into like an actual depression, probably, at the age of like 8 or 9 when she finally finished the last book. I was indignant that there were no more. Why? What happened? Yeah. So
I
I
think
love
like
it.
we've all had that experience with books, especially. And it's funny because I'm gonna call out Elizabeth. She has not read Harry Potter. And it was so great the way you wrote the frenzy because we felt like an outside. The reader feels like an outsider and seeing the frenzy. And I asked Elizabeth, is this how you feel when we talk about Harry Potter? Like when we're sorting ourselves in houses and you're like, what are you talking about? Because it feels so random. And I feel like that was done so well to feel like there's a world that we don't understand and these people are so into it. And I was like, oh, this is what Harry Potter feels like just to an outsider. But
Yeah. Yeah. These
so
random words and
yes,
characters that you think that you're supposed to like, but you have no
right,
idea who they are.
right.
And it's always spouting phrases that, her father or her sister have no idea what they mean.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's so
Yeah,
fun.
I have no objection to Harry Potter other than it came out right when I was having babies and had 3 children in 4.5 years, and that's just right when all that started. And so I, when I retire from Fabled, of course, we talked about me taking a sabbatical and just getting, I want to listen to the entire series. So it will happen one day,
Someday.
but I'm a total outsider now. Yeah.
It was done so well. It even remind me of like the scene in Stranger Things when they're all playing Dungeons and Dragons and they're just so into it. It just you did kids so well, like just their attitudes. Anyways. Okay, the setting of Blue Skies, Colorado feels very unique and unusual. And many of us Texans, we often travel up to Colorado. So we've been in those types of towns that are having the reenactments and random museums. Do you have a connection to Colorado? Why did you choose this as the setting? And I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, I was born in Tulsa and grew up in Oklahoma City.
Ooh.
So every summer we would drive in our car and we would go to either a dude ranch in Colorado or we would go to Branson, Missouri. I think one time we went to, I'm really dating myself, but there was that amusement park in Arkansas that was based on the Dog Patch comic. Uh,
I don't
I'm
know
sure
about
it's not there anymore, but my dad was always driving us very long distances for very quirky reasons.
Mhm.
So, yeah, but I really loved it. Maybe not the car rides on the way back, but yeah, it just kind of stuck with me. Just all those little towns and like strange little tourist traps we went to. I loved it. And I'm a big fan of Colorado and the
Mhm.
Southwest anyway.
That's great.
I love it. Well, can you talk a little bit about the decision you made to start the book in the Falling World? Was that something that you always thought you were going to do, or did your publisher help you decide to do that and really kind of get you into that world right away?
Yeah, that is such a great question. And I actually have goosebumps talking about this because when I had originally started writing a book about three sisters who were estranged and they were dealing with the death of their very eccentric mother.
Mm.
And it wasn't working. I revised it a million times. I worked on it for years. And I kept coming back to the question of why I couldn't lose myself in the story like I always did with the books that I read as a kid. So that took me kind of down a different path of where I knew I wanted to write about a writer. And then I knew I wanted to incorporate writer's block because that was my life at the time. And then the dementia piece kind of came together. So as all of these were mixing in my brain, I was taking a lot of long walks to think about like how the story would play out. And the very first sentence of the book popped into my head and everything just kind of fell into place after that.
Mhm.
So it just felt
Good,
very,
great decision. I loved it.
oh, thanks.
Well, on the other side of things, did you, and this kind of goes with a question that Courtney asked in the chat, is about the ending. Did you ever want the book to end differently? And then her question was, have the coming together of both stories been planned, or is that a happy accident?
I'll see. These are such interesting questions. So I have to say, a lot of when I'm writing my best and everything is going really well, I feel like I'm not even aware of what's going on, and then I can look back at the paper and be like, oh, look at what happened, and I feel a little removed from it. Um, I feel like a lot of times I do make very conscious decisions, but the dovetailing of Peanut's story and Libby's, gosh, I don't think I planned it out until I had actually written to that point.
Wow.
And I think it was kind of like an aha moment, like, oh, this is what's going to happen.
Oh,
And
that was so good.
yeah.
I love it.
I love it. It's funny, I have read thousands of books in my life. I've been a voracious reader my whole life, but if you asked me my three favorite books of my life, I read them all in high school. And
Mhm.
it's just something that, I loved Roots. I loved Gone with the Wind and The
Mhm.
Thornbirds, which I took from my grandmother's shelf. But those are ones that I think, that I'll remember for the rest of my life as the ones that just had a huge impact on me. And I wanted to read this quote that I feel very strongly about. And it says, books read during childhood often remain our favorites because they become deeply intertwined with our formative experiences, creating a strong emotional connection through nostalgia, personal identification with characters, and the ability to transport us back to a specific time in our lives, even as we grow older. Um, and I think about this with Peanut and her friends and how they feel about the falling world. But is there a book that you loved as a child, just like Peanut loved the falling children?
Mm. I had a lot of books I loved. I think one that has stuck with me over the years is a series that not everyone has read, the Betsy Tacy books by
Yeah.
Maud Lovelace. Absolutely love those. Like,
Mhm.
I read those over and over and over again. But I also really loved fantasy books. Um, there was a summer where I was determined to read every book in the library. And I don't remember how far I got, but I do remember I stopped at Goodbye, Mr. Chips. I don't
Oh,
I don't know
That is
why, but I
so
was like,
fun.
I'm done with that. Yeah.
yeah.
That
But
I feel like I could see little Elizabeth with that same goal of reading every
Oh,
book in
yeah.
the library.
In fact, I was at an event today and someone said, have you read every book at Fabled? And I thought, well, I've tried, but I'm familiar with them all, but that would be a good goal and I'll never catch up. So, for me as a child, it was Anne of Green Gables, and my oldest son is named Matthew because of Anne of Green Gables. And again, I almost don't even want to read it now because it would ruin the experience of reading it as a fifth grader in my head.
and
So.
that's a really interesting phenomena too, how I have gone back to read some books and sometimes I'm like, I wonder why I liked this so much. And then other times it really holds up for me. Like Wrinkle in Time is one that I reread as an adult and I was like, yep, I can see why I love that.
Did you introduce your children to the Betsy Tacy books?
I did, and they just weren't into it.
Mm.
That's my daughter the same way.
Yeah.
It's so funny. I'm always like, be gentle because I liked this book, So,
Mhm. Yeah.
so
But both my son and daughter loved Wrinkle in Time, so I felt like,
that's good.
There you go. Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Redeemed a little bit.
Yeah, and Anna Green Gables was a big hit.
I
Swiss Family
mean, yeah,
Robinson was a big hit.
that's so
Yeah.
great. Well, going back a little bit to the ending and the twist that Jessie is Peanut's mother. I was asking Elizabeth, like, I didn't see it coming.
Mm.
And she said she didn't either. And to do a twist like that. We've asked this to authors before. Do you leave breadcrumbs within the pages because I missed them? Or, and I would love to hear if anybody else was like, oh, I totally thought that from the beginning. But what's it like to kind of have a surprise like that at the end?
I am so happy to hear that you didn't see it coming because I was really worried that I was making it too obvious. I think just because it's something
Nope,
we
we're
didn't.
good.
Don't worry.
because I think, it's something that you're living with. It's like you just feel surrounded with the story and so into it, and it's very hard to imagine what it looks like on the outside, or from the outside. So I think I was always very excited about having that reveal at the end, but also kind of cringing, like, oh, I hope people aren't like, duh, it's been,
Right.
setting it up since chapter 3.
I think
Hopefully.
she was such a good opposition that's what I was distracted of. Like anytime he didn't want to do things, Jesse's ruining it. I was like, oh, okay. So I don't think I made that connection at all because she was always preventing the plot that Peanut wanted to keep going.
Yeah.
Oh, Amber says she definitely saw it coming. Okay.
Okay.
When
your
she
kids
made
don't
the
hate-
comment about if your kids don't hate you, are you even parenting right? That
Yeah.
that is a big sign for sure. I missed that one.
Good job, Amber. We were oblivious. Well, what are some themes that were important for you to convey in the book? And again, after working with dementia patients, I have learned how important it is to have family and friends or just people looking out for you. And can this still be accomplished in a world that is increasingly more isolated?
I think the idea of connecting with others is so important that you can't get through anything by yourself. And sometimes found family is kind of the heart and soul that you've been looking for that can get you through those tough times. Not to be kind of drippy or sentimental about it, but I think the connections that we make with other people can surprise us and support us and help us understand ourselves better. So I really wanted to talk about that. I think I really wanted to talk about grief, and how it kind of comes in different flavors. And it's not a contest as to whose life is harder or whose grief is more deep, that we all feel it. And it can be a way for us to connect with each other. And I think I also really wanted to address any topic that felt really weighty with a sense of humor or lightness. I had read, well, this was after I wrote the book, but I had been listening to, I think, an NPR podcast that had Brett Goldstein from Ted Lasso on it, who played Roy Kent. And he was talking about being a writer and how important it is to have that like light touch with really weighty topics. And he gave an example of being I think about this all the time, about being at a funeral with a bunch of people. Everyone is so sad and devastated. And then someone walks by with pushing a cart, but the cart has a very squeaky wheel and the person's walking very slowly. So in the midst of their grief, they have this like really funny comedic situation playing out in front of them, and it just made them all laugh and was nourishing in a way that they hadn't anticipated. So I love that idea of just how humor can help us kind of shore us up through some really tough times.
It's funny that you say that because that's how I sell the book. I'll say it sounds really sad, but it's not. It's hopeful and sweet and funny. And I love the mix of emotions like that. It's not trauma. It's a sad thing happening, but it's life and it's hopeful. So that's something that I really it resonated with me in the story.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad. I think about that sometimes. I'll be talking to someone who might not know me very well, and they ask about the plot, and I tell them, and I can see that they're kind of like, "Ooh, I don't know if I can handle that." And I'm like, "It's not sad. It's
Right.
not, I promise."
Yeah.
Like,
I think that's what I say to people too. I always say if it's sad, there is a redemption in it.
yeah,
So, that getting to that point is good.
yeah, it takes place in like a benevolent universe where
Mm.
everything is gonna be okay, even if the circumstances don't feel okay.
Mhm.
Right.
And,
Beatrice has a great question. She was surprised that Peanut took the Tylenol. What made you take it to that level?
um, that is a good question. I think, for anyone who's ever dealt with depression, I think that there can be times where it feels so intense you just want it to stop,
Mm.
and you will do anything to get it to stop. And I think that was how Peanut was feeling, just not able to intellectually deal with everything that was going on, but so awash with emotion that she just wanted it to stop. So for me, because I think I've dealt with depression throughout off and on throughout my life, like I know what that feels like.
Mhm.
I think it can be uh, difficult for someone who what am I trying to say? I think it can be really difficult to understand because it doesn't feel rational.
Mm.
But I think it can feel, yeah, a really painful experience.
It seemed to me that Peanut just felt everything so
Yeah.
big,
Mhm.
the ups and the downs and all of it. So yeah.
She did.
Yeah.
So being a debut author, which to have this kind of book for a debut author is, like we were saying, like so exciting for us. We love just to push books like this into people's hands. What surprised you about the publishing process, from getting a contract to going on a book tour? I'd love to hear some stories if you have.
I have loved how supportive and lovely other authors have been. Um, the thing that has the, the thing that has surprised me the most is how horrible I am on social media. Absolutely the hardest part of the entire process. If I just get on Instagram, I have no idea what to do.
That's hilarious.
Do I do a picture of my dog? Like, how do I work that? Like, I don't know what people want from me. Yeah, I have
Right.
no idea. So if you follow me on Instagram and you see a post, rest assured it has taken me probably an hour and a half to do it. And you're looking at like the 100th revision of 2 sentences.
So
But
funny.
what a better way to get people to follow you, because now we're all going to go and look for
Oh,
sure.
God, it's just a mess.
Well, I would
I'd
imagine
say
too.
I'd say like
Sorry.
half of the authors I talk to are like that.
Mhm.
So you're not
Oh,
alone.
that makes me feel better. Yes, I need lots of Instagram tips. It's terrible. And I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure like a quarter of at least of the people who are following me are like just bots anyway.
Yes, we
So it's
understand.
very humbling, very humbling.
Right.
Um,
Um,
oh,
Go ahead.
go ahead.
Your question. Your question. Go ahead.
Okay. And I always hesitate a little bit to ask this question to authors because they're like, let's talk about Libby. But what are you working on now? Have you decided that you are enjoying the fiction process, or do you want to go back to magazines? What is on your brain right now, Stephanie?
Yeah. I still do a lot of freelance work. Um, so that is taking up a lot of my time right now, just random stories for random media outlets, which I really love to do because I love to be busy. Um, but I have finished a second novel, which I'm super, super excited about. So waiting to see what will happen with that.
So
Yeah.
where is that in the process right now? Is it at your editor, or where that
It's with my agent,
your agent?
and yeah, so we'll see what
I'll
happens.
see. Oh, I can't wait.
It's very different and yeah, very different, but I'm really excited about it.
That's so
Well,
awesome.
we're excited for you. Can't wait to see
Mm,
it, see
mm.
the fruition of it.
Maybe for that one, we can get you to come down to Texas for that book
Yeah,
tour. That would
Yes,
be
I have
amazing.
lots of relatives in the Dallas area,
Oh, there
so
you go. Yes, we're only an hour and a half south, so it's just a real quick trip.
sure.
Well, thank you so much, Stephanie. I mean, your book is amazing, and I am going to be recommending it to so many people. And I'm so glad to just hear the inside of your thought process and how you created wonderful Peanut and just a wonderful story of redemption. So thank you so much. We
Oh,
really
thank
appreciate you
you.
joining us.
Well, I appreciate you asking me, and I am so grateful to you all for all the support that you've given me, and I love that you love the book, so thank you.
Well, we're going to have Elizabeth introduce our next month's book, and I'm putting in the chat for anyone that would like to join, Stephanie included, for next month, what we're reading, and you can sign up for that Zoom. And yeah.
Yeah, so our next book is a little different than we don't typically do sci-fi fantasy books, but I found one that it was my favorite sci-fi fantasy. I guess it's more fantasy this year, and that was A Song to Drown Rivers by Anne Leong. And I think she will be joining us from Australia, which will be the furthest we've ever talked to anyone. But this book was absolutely gorgeous. It's the retelling of the myth of Zishi, who was a Chinese woman, absolutely beautiful, and her village is really suffering at the hands of another rival village, and she is asked to marry into this other rival village to help save her family. It kind of reminded me a little bit of Queen Esther in the Bible, that feeling, but it was utterly gorgeous. It's a beautiful book. I would love for you to buy it at Fabled. Sprayed edges and a fantastic story. So I hope that everyone gets to join us in February to hear from Anne.
Love it. Well, I've put that sign up in the chat, but we'll also include it on our email tomorrow where you'll get the whole recording of our interview with Stephanie. And we'll also post it on our YouTube channel. So if you ever want to go back on our website, you can go to events and then past events. And we have all of our interviews with amazing authors. So feel free, if hours and hours of content for you to watch. Stephanie, thank you again for joining us. I will be anticipating the next book. And we are just cheering you on from Fabled.
Oh, thanks so much again.
Thank you, Stephanie. Have a good night.
You
Yes.
too.
Bye, guys.